Have you heard of Jones Dairy Farm, located in Fort Atkinson? They do premium meat manufacturing, making dry-aged bacon, naturally smoked hams and Canadian bacon, all-natural sausage, and more. Their sausage is available in pork, chicken, and turkey, and is free from preservatives, additives, MSG, nitrates, fillers, and only uses fresh ingredients. It's a 7th-generation family-owned and operated farm who's been making breakfast better since 1889. Learn more at jonesdairyfarm.com. That's jonesdairyfarm.com. Want to give local kids the gift of music? Music Con Brio provides high-quality, accessible sliding scale tuition music lessons to students in grades 1 through 12 on Madison's East Side. Since 2011, they've worked with hundreds of students, but as a result of the Madison School's recent decision to start charging them rental fees after years of free space for operations, Music Con Brio needs your help to manage this new major expense. To support their holiday fundraising campaign, you can go to musicconbrio.org. Funds will support rental costs at Emerson, expansion to new sites, and much more. Today on CityCast Madison. It's Tuesday, so it's time for another installment of Must See Madison. In this case, it's more of a must-read Madison. Tone Madison, the small local independent news and culture publisher, is turning 10 years old. This Friday, they're throwing an anniversary party at Gamma Ray Bar to celebrate a decade of their hyper-local and honest arts, culture, and politics coverage. So, to help mark the occasion and reminisce on all that is Tone, me and executive producer Hayley Sperling sit down with the man behind it all, Tone's publisher, Scott Gordon. It's Tuesday, December 3rd. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Scott Gordon, welcome back to CityCast Madison. We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see you both.
Yes. And we're here with Hayley Sperling, executive producer, who wrangled you to our midst to chat. Hayley, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy. You guys are two of my favorite Madison media moguls, and I'm so excited to talk about Tone Madison. It's big stuff for y'all.
10 years? Mm-hmm. How do you feel, Scott?
Significantly aged.
I mean, Scott, you're no stranger to the show. You're clearly no stranger to the two of us. You have been on CityCast Madison. You've talked about everything from our local music scene to news stories surrounding police body cam footage. So all's that to say is that you truly have the range. And I think that also really sums up the range of your publication, Tone Madison. And as we mentioned, Tone is celebrating a big milestone this year, 10 years. And again, what an achievement. We all know Tone as our city's source for music, culture, and quote unquote strong points of view, which we don't always see these days. And Tone hasn't always necessarily been the website that we know and love today. Can you give us a little taste of its origin story? How did we get Tone Madison?
Yeah, so for a couple of years, for about 2012 to 2014, a few of us in town were doing a podcast. I was doing that with Mark Rickers, Joel Shanahan, and Ben Munson, who've all done, different kinds of journalism and writing in town as well. And over time, that morphed into doing more written work. And I went through a lot of thought about how we were presenting that and how to set it up. So we came up with the name Tone Madison. Mark actually built the first version of our website himself. And I guess the idea at the start of it really was to have a publication where the central focus was on things that were just not really a priority for other outlets. And especially starting out, that tended to mean local music stuff that was a little more out of the way, local culture stuff that was a little weird, and just providing a space where people could cover those things in a way that felt kind of less confining than we were used to in terms of all sorts of things, from your approach to your writing voice to the lengths of things. And we wanted to provide a more slightly like critical and adversarial voice about a lot of things. We wanted to be able to write about music and the arts in a way that felt substantive and meaningful to us. I think there's been a tendency in media for arts coverage to get really devalued. When publications bother with it at all, it's often put in this box of sort of, it's just the later stuff and it's kind of promotional, and we sell ads against it to venues and whatever. There's a lot of people out there who want a richer conversation about all of these things and want that on the local level. So that is something we still strive to do, and it's still not easy, but it's still to us very worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, Madison does have such a thriving local art scene, especially, when it comes to music and theater and film. We're always talking about it, and it's just really refreshing to hear someone talk about it with that same sort of sincerity that we hear about like news stories and politics and whatnot.
Yeah, I feel like y'all just have such a voice. Cue that quote unquote strong points of view. We'll just say sometimes sizzling. Like you guys are willing to say things that other outlets won't and take risks, which I love. And I want to ask, I mean, my goodness, you've made it a decade. What's the secret to success, Scott?
Yeah, well, we've persevered, and we still struggle all the time to make the finances add up, despite working very hard on that. We struggle to put out, a fraction of the work that we'd like to. So I'm not sure success is even the right word on a certain level, but we've been persistent, and we have been very stubborn about focusing on the things that we think we can do well, the really specific areas where we think we have something valuable to contribute, and not trying to do a whole lot else outside of that. So we're doing niche work for a niche audience, essentially. I would argue that there should be more publications out there that are very small and very flexible and owned and controlled by journalists, and just focus on serving a specific need very well. I think there's a lot of value to that, and I think it's eventually going to prove more durable than a lot of these like larger legacy media structures.
It's a tough industry out there. I think, Scott, you're being your casual, bashful self, but I mean, 10 years, it is a success. A lot of people don't make it that far. It's pretty big. And I think one thing that I've really appreciated about Tone is your ability to be so nimble. I mean, like you said, you started off as a podcast. Tone is clearly, not a podcast anymore. And Tone is also, I think, unique in the fact that these days, it's also now a journalist-owned and reader-supported publication. Back in 2023, Tone officially became a worker-owned cooperative. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means and why you guys made that decision?
Yeah, so a worker-owned cooperative, it's a really specific sort of business structure, and we have kind of a lot of them in Madison, actually, which is nice because that creates a really good support network. I should shout out a great local organization called MadWork that we're a member of that does a lot of that work and brings a lot of those folks together. And they're also in the middle of a year-end fundraising campaign and are very much worth supporting for what they're doing. For us, it is a way of making sure that we're accountable to one another internally, like the four of us who currently actually like own the thing, and that we're shielding ourselves from outside influence or interference, and that we're giving the core staff like the power to make decisions that shape the business. And so that structure in a lot of ways made sense for the way that we were already trying to run things.
Come one, come all. Join Children's Theater of Madison for a holiday tradition, A Christmas Carol. December 7th through the 22nd in the historic Capitol Theater at Overture Center. This is the 48th year that Children's Theater of Madison will be producing A Christmas Carol for our area. Expect to be transported into the world of Charles Dickens' Victorian England and the infamous miserly Ebenezer Scrooge. Watch as the ghosts of Scrooge's past, present, and future help him find hope and relearn the true spirit of the holiday. This version was written by one of their own, a Children's Theater alum, Chaz T. Martin, and weaves another Dickens story, The Lamplighters, into this familiar Christmas Carol tale. And for the 4th year, popular APT actor LaShawn Banks returns as Ebenezer Scrooge. Directed by Brian Cowing, this tale is for ages 8 and up. Get your seats today. Tickets at ctmtheater.org. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you do to stay cozy over the winter months? Me personally, I love sipping warm drinks from clunky mugs and watching the first Lord of the Rings every December to remind me of the beauty of the Shire. It's comforting, and you know, therapy's a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. It's helped me strengthen my positive coping skills and shown me how to set boundaries and keep them. By the way, therapy isn't just for those who experience major trauma, though we're out here and it helps. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime free of charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/citycast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/citycast.
Y'all have been revisiting some of your favorite stories from the past decade over these past couple of months. Can you give us a little taste? Give us the hits. I have some of my own favorites, of course, mostly the ones that I wrote. But tell us about, what you're looking back on over these past 10 years, what you're bringing back up to the surface.
So it is really hard to choose for this because there is a lot that I'm proud of. There are a lot of writers and illustrators and contributors who I feel really fortunate to have gotten to work with, including both of you and the writing that each of you have done. So really hard to narrow it down. But I went back and thought through a few things that stood out to me for different reasons. One was a series that we published, and this was actually a collaboration with Madison Minutes. And we rolled this out in May of 2023, and it's called Post-Row Family Planning in Madison. And it's a 6-part reported series. Hayley actually reported one of those stories.
I did.
And it actually won us our first Grown Up Journalism Award. So that was kind of cool. So in 2022, after the Dobbs ruling leaked, obviously we were trying to figure out how do we cover it with what we've got, which is not a publication that's set up to do breaking news. What can we do with this that's valuable? And in collaboration with Madison Minutes, we ended up surveying a bunch of people about how the Dobbs ruling was affecting their family planning decisions. And then from that survey, we looked through and identified some themes that we developed into different story ideas. And approaching it like that really gave us an opportunity to explore the nuances of how this court ruling was affecting people in the state in all kinds of different situations. And it was kind of a testament, first of all, that 2 really small publications can pull off something quite ambitious if they are willing to stick with it for a year, because it literally took a year of work from start to finish to get this done. So I'm really proud of that as a work of journalism. Another one to go all the way back to 2014 is a piece by Chris Lay. The headline of the piece is "My hatred of the pedal pub is deep and true."
That's a classic.
This might be like the most read, like most argued over maybe piece that we've ever published. It's what it sounds like. It's Chris explaining why he hates pedal pubs so much. And this was back when those were still like a relatively new thing here. And he was really spot on about the direction that Madison was going at the time and still is, in that it's getting kind of more expensive and even more oriented around this sort of like uncultured slob mentality almost. and I feel like it's an important part of what we do to provide a safe space for haters, for someone to come out and say, like, this thing sucks and here's why it matters that it sucks, and
That might be the best tagline for Tone I've ever heard, a safe space for haters.
and it's not about just being negative all the time for negativity's sake, but I think you end up with a more honest publication as a whole if you're willing to go there sometimes.
It's genuine criticism, which we don't see in a lot of places, right? Which can be hard, especially in a city like Madison, where we are a relatively small town at the end of the day, and you don't really want to hammer too hard on anyone because at the end of the day, that's just another local business. And we truly want each other to survive and thrive here. But I think Tone walks a very solid line in terms of having these very pointed critiques while still, not just like dunking on anyone because it's an easy dunk. There's rhyme, there's a reason to all of the feedback and criticisms that you guys make, and I think it's very fair and important that we have that, because like I said, we don't see a lot of it.
Thanks. I think one thing that I really love about Tone Madison is that everyone who's contributed over the years as a staffer or a freelancer has added something distinctive that only they could have added, in terms of their voice, their perspective, and the things that they know and care about.
Going back to the Dobbs series, like one of my favorite part of this series, other than the fact that like it tells so many really important stories and covers so many different perspectives, but it's the illustrations that go with it and tie all of those various stories together and create this one big cohesive piece. And Tone, I think, is always just killing it across the board with the illustrations and the artwork. And I think, again, it's because you clearly put a value on the artist and the art that is being created when it comes into these pieces.
Yeah, for the Dobbs series, all of the illustrations were created by an artist and designer here in town named Kay Reynolds. And they did an incredible job of giving the whole series like this coherent visual identity. And we've gotten to work with a bunch of great illustrators over the years to create original editorial art to go along with stories. It's something that I really, really enjoy getting to do. And we're constantly trying to find more capacity and more budget to do more of that, because it just makes things so much richer and more engaging on the site.
It really does. It's also one of my favorite parts are the illustrations for your stories. And also, it's a testament to what you just shared, Scott, about you make space for people. You make space for creatives in Madison, including both of us, writers. You were actually my first real editor. So where I wrote something and got paid for it. You allowed me to write on the movie beat. And that was just like very special for me. And me thinking like, wait, you're going to pay me for writing film reviews? And you are out in these streets getting that money and then giving it to people for doing this creative work. So I know Hayley feels the same as me. Like, we owe you gratitude. And we share it willingly. You really, like, it's something special that you're offering. And you have consistently throughout this conversation reiterated that that is your goal in making space for other voices. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I really appreciate it.
And I did want to ask, like, in tandem with, like your favorites over the past 10 years. Can you shout out any of the stories that were clearly risks? Because you guys, like, you go there, like, obviously the pedal story, like, that was controversial. And many of us are right there with Chris. Like, these things suck and they're annoying and then they're way. It may be dangerous. But yeah, like, top stories that were bombastic and risky.
I'm trying to think which things got us the most shit, you know?
I feel like you guys dunk on Soglin, former Mayor Soglin.
Yeah,
Classic.
but people seem to mostly enjoy that. Like, he blocked us on social media when he was still on social media, which was funny. But like, as far as things that like got a memorable amount of like negative reactions, a somewhat lighter side thing that managed to draw a lot of flack was back in 2019. One of our freelancers at the time, John McCracken, who is now an amazing investigative environmental journalist, wrote this piece about the music lineup at Taste of Madison. And basically, John and I did this like silly data analysis of bands who had played the JJO rock stage at Taste of Madison over the years, and kind of looked at the amount of repetition of that and stuff. And John wrote a piece kind of making fun of that. And like, he's a big fan of like metal and heavy music generally. So he was sort of looking at this long history of lineups of like butt rock basically and razzing it. And that ended up driving like a ton of angry comments. There was so much anger about this, and like people saying like,
we like our butt rock.
and like, you know, obviously we don't mind saying something negative and standing by like, yeah, we said that. But it was kind of funny that of all things prompted such a reaction. Just like so many like angry dudes from like Janesville. As far as things that like got a memorable amount of like negative reactions, when people started bringing back events, you know, after the initial like COVID shutdown, we wrote critically sometimes about that and about the implications of trying to bring back events, you know, in some cases before vaccines had necessarily been widely rolled out, you know, to the point that most people were vaccinated, that kind of thing. And that understandably rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because I think we were raising valid criticisms, but also, you know, we're talking about people's livelihoods and just the sheer amount of the stress that people were enduring through that whole period.
Well, speaking of events, we're allowed to be there now, right? And in fact, we need to be there to celebrate. You got a huge event coming up for your 10 years, right? Hayley and I want to go. It's all the rage.
You should. I hope we see you there. Yeah, so December 6th, it's a Friday at Gamma Ray Bar. We are having our 10th anniversary party, and our music editor, Steven Sperling, has booked an absolutely wonderful lineup of local musicians, and it really spans across some different genres and starts a little quieter and gets louder at the end. To start off, we've got Carissa and Avoidance Policy, then Holly and the Nice Lions, and then closing things out, Cult of the Lip. And we have two DJs, Evan Woodward and DJ Mew, spinning between bands.
That's a rock solid lineup.
Yeah, ticket sales from this are going to support our year-end fundraising campaign, as well as donations that people are able to make through the website. Mostly, we're just kind of looking forward to hanging out with people who care about what we do and enjoying all this good music. And we're putting together a couple of little surprise things for that. So yeah, I really hope we can pack it out, because I think it'll be a good lineup and a nice time.
Shout out to Gamma Ray and shout out to Tone Madison. 10 years. You can find all of their content at tonemadison.com. And again, yeah, celebrate the anniversary and get to know some local music, get to meet some new friends, get to see some cool people. December 6th at Gamma Ray. Scott Gordon, it has been such a lovely time reminiscing with you on this beautiful journey that is Tone Madison. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you both so much. And thanks to everyone out there who reads our work and cares and gives us feedback, positive or negative, because it's all really valuable. So thank you.
Shout out to the haters. Your place is Tone Madison.
That's Scott Gordon, publisher of Tone Madison, chatting with me and Hayley Sperling, our executive producer, talking about 10 years of Tone Madison. Long live local journalism. If you're interested in attending or learning more about their 10-year anniversary bash this Friday, December 6th, head to our show notes for a link. That's all for today, here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with the biggest hater in your life? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, live long and prosper, baby. Scott Goron.
Scott Goron. We're off to a great start.
The brand integrity has suffered some. We've had to start jettisoning letters. Times are tight.